the line edit. So what is it? It's quite literally what it sounds like. Editing line by line, word by word, focusing on clarity. And why would we bother doing that? Because we want to improve readability, consistency, and to essentially ensure that our writing and word choice is effective and impactful. And it's not only that, it's also because there are certain things like genre conventions. There are things to consider, like the age of your audience. When we're thinking about what we want to consider, the two main things are audience and genre. So our audience, one of the things is the age group. I get people sending me developmental edits sometimes, and the content is very adult. We're dealing with serious themes, but the language and the style that it is written is YA, and there is a disconnect there. And so what we will do in something like a developmental edit is we will say, okay, so what is it about this that is giving like a YA vibe? And it usually is in the lines. It's usually things like hand holding, characters asking a lot of questions, things like that. It's also language choice and trusting an adult reader's ability to follow without spelling it out. So there is a difference between how we write for YA and how we write for adults in terms of word choice and style. So, for example, if you are writing a middle-aged novel, are you using accessible language? Are you helping the reader understand what you're saying? And if you're writing for adults, are you allowing them to discover something for themselves? We always assume our reader is intelligent, whatever their age. But there is a difference in word choice for the age of a reader. Something else is genre. Thrillers don't use poetic or lyrical language usually, and a fantasy novel isn't usually sparse. But thrillers are fast-paced, and because of this, they use short, sharp sentences to engage the reader, make them turn the page, really heighten that tension. Whereas fantasy, on the other hand, uses like lyrical, flowery language to really play up the setting. So this is called The Letter. It's about a little girl waking up and hearing her parents arguing downstairs and not knowing what to do. So just an example of some of the decisions I've made, because I'm thinking of the age of the audience and I'm thinking they're going to be middle grade. I've used conversational language to engage them at the beginning, like, hang on, there it was again. Then I'm reminding them of what it is that we're dealing with, even though there was a line before this, the noise that had woken her. I'm holding their hand so that they are following me. I'm putting some longer words in to help with things like education. And I'm leaving the paragraph on a cliffhanger, even though it's a short story, to try and maintain engagement. Because somebody who is in middle grade might have a harder time sticking with a story than an adult. So I'm using fairly simple language, but I'm also using words like scrambling, muffle, permission, muttering, and trying to use language that will engage them and perhaps make them ask, okay, so what does that mean? So when we're thinking about line editing, we are thinking about your ideal reader. That's the person we're thinking about. What else are we looking for when we are line editing? With everything, and this is really true in writing, consistency is key. So whatever you're doing, make sure you're being consistent with it. What we're looking for is awkward phrasing or syntax. So awkward phrasing, anything that you kind of stumble over. I find when people write had, even though it's grammatically correct in a sentence, I find it really jarring and difficult to get my head around. I would always recommend rewriting had in a different sentence. Misused or overused words. Oh my goodness me, we all have so many overused words. I know I do. Mine are just the same every single manuscript. But because I know what they are, I've got a list of them on my style sheet. So I search for them after my first draft. And for a lot of people, it's overused. People get really hung up on nodding and smiling and brow furrowing. People also get hung up on saying things like nodded his head. But if someone's nodding, we know they're nodding their head. So we don't need to say their head. Cliches. Cliches are fine and great to use if they are in dialogue. They are a part of how someone is communicating with another person or how they are seeing the world. In narrative, slightly different thing. Cliches in narrative, if you can rewrite them to be an original own thing, I would recommend it. But we communicate with each other through cliches, which is why I say it's fine if your character is communicating with the world, people around them in that way, or they are using a cliche to understand the world. That is realistic. That's how we are. Repetition in word, action, and narration, and unnatural dialogue. Unnatural dialogue is a tricky one to see sometimes if it's your own work. A really good thing to do is to highlight every use of speech marks where you have used dialogue and to read it aloud and just to have a little play with that. You might find that the way you say it aloud is different to the way it's written down. And if that's the case, I would say always go with the way you said it aloud. That's usually the one that sounds more correct to a reader, especially if it's dialogue, sometimes with a narrative as well.